Hi, Dr. Reddy.
How are you, Prenisha?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are
Yes,
you
I'm well.
doing?
I'm well. How are you? And how was you?
We're doing
Very well, very well.
okay.
I mean, we all are well, and we've got yes, yes. And I think it's a fascinating time. We've got spring day coming, and we got a special full moon on full blossom.
Yes. How is the full moon treating you, Dr. Reddy?
Positively, and they say that where there's light and there's positive vibrations, right? And I think
Mm.
we have to embrace the special full moon.
Yes. A lot of people have been having a
Yeah.
hard time with this full moon, but I think it's very important that we remain positive and we look at it as a way of releasing, and that we can then look forward to what's next. We can look forward to tomorrow. We can look forward to our manifestations coming in.
Yeah, and people are talking about the special blue moon. They say that it is the closest approach to Earth, earning the title super blue moon. And well, let's embrace it for the moon to be as closest to the Earth. I think that we are graced and blessed by it, and I think let's embrace the light. And how do we deal with it? I mean, understandably, I said on the previous podcast, the moon affects the brain because in terms of 70% water levels. But I think that let's turn it around and say we are graced to have this experience. And I think it'll
Mm.
be a good few years when this will happen again. I'm not sure when, but I think
Mm.
no, not in the near future. I think somebody told me the
Yes.
other day it'll be in about 20 years time, or 15 years time. I think 14 years time. Somebody told me.
Wow. So we should be grateful and embrace all the emotions and the craziness that's been coming out, and enjoy it and release it and be happy that it's coming up and coming out, which means you are making space for good stuff to come in.
Yes, I think I like what you said. I think it's very, very important. It's almost like, big companies, they say we unbundle big companies to make it more efficient. Like that, we unbundle ourselves. And in terms of our
Yes.
emotions, our mind, body, soul, and, and
Mm.
we look at it in that kind of context. And, so when you create space and shed the things you don't need in your life and allow the goodness to filter the life.
Yes,
Yeah,
true. And
So I think
with
this
that,
is a wonderful preparation is to relate to the light and not the darkness. I think that I mean how the brain
yes,
and it functions, but how the moon also functions. And let's understand that. Let's embrace it instead of perhaps overcome by it. I think if you embrace it positively and say that the moon is my best friend. Yeah, right. And I love the moon, and I'm relate to the moon. I said it's a fantastic experience for the moon to reach us so closely. I mean, we are graced for all the souls who are watching the moon.
yes, true.
You know.
And today we are talking about nutrition. And usually, when the full moon is up, a lot of us don't feel too good, and we tend to go for the sweets and chocolates and comfort foods just to help us get by. But today we are talking about nutrition. So, why is it important to talk about nutrition? Why should we care? Why should we take notes? Why can't we just eat whatever?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant opening, and I think nutrition is just not food in terms of how we like and way we like to eat. I think we have to understand that we have a mind, body, and
Mm.
soul. I think that we are trustees to the body, and the body is made up of the seven body systems, and the subtle part is you've got nerve endings, we've got blood vessels, all that. And the true sense of why is important in relation to nutrition is a subtle part of the food that we eat forms your nerves and blood vessels. And that's how important it is.
Mm.
And that nerves and blood vessels
Mm.
is connected to the whole body, seven systems. So it's very fundamental what you put into your body because it's about almost like, the most subtlest part. affects you. The nerves affect you, the arteries affect, the veins affect you, and that's the most
mm,
important reason, and how important nutrition
mm,
is. And what you take in is the way you affect your emotions. It affects your mind, and the most importantly, affects your way your body functions, right? And I think it's
mm,
critical. I think if the converse is that if you don't take this into consideration, you'll be overweight. It affects your skin. It affects your. I often give the story. I said, you pay for good food at the in whatever way that you purchase it or grow it. If you don't do that, I said you'll pay at the pharmacy.
That's true.
Right?
And
And
I have.
my
Mm,
philosophy is this: we should not be dependent on too many external intake like multivitamins. I'm not saying they're not necessary. I think sometimes you
yeah.
need those supplements, but I think
Yeah.
that food is your medicine,
Mm, mm. And I
right?
also think like the kinds of foods as well. Um, because a lot of fruits and vegetables have um, some companies are using pesticides, some people are using, wax to cover the fruits and things like that. So I think it's also important the kinds or types of food that we are eating. Is that also key? Or
Yes, it's very important what you just said about some of them
yeah,
are waxed and some of them have got coverings on it. And we know
yeah,
for a fact that some of the apples, and why you shouldn't eat the
yeah,
skin, and because, they have some sort of coating or preservative or spray. I'm not 100% sure, but,
yeah.
I'm talking to people in the industry and they tell me that definitely that you should skin the apples and you should not eat the skin for that reason, unless eating totally organic apples and which have got no
Mm,
preservatives, it's got no sprays in it, and which is
mm.
different.
Yes, yes. So, Dr.
Mm.
Reddy, you do something that's called, holistic dental medicine and surgery. Can you please, um, you know, tell us more about that and what exactly it means?
Yeah, hey, Prenisha, yeah, I just want to trace back. I qualified as a normal, what they call
Yeah.
allopathic health practitioner, and I think that uh, in traditional medical dental school, and I think that this is what happened. And
Mm-hmm,
but in my early formative years, I was involved in one of the first AIDS programs. With Professor Shear, who was at Wits University and the medical school, and I was part of his early programs and in terms of understanding AIDS as a so-called virus or a lifestyle. And so that was my first entry into integrative understanding of dental medicine and surgery. And subsequent to that, I was
mm-hmm,
exposed to two great individuals from Pretoria University, Professor
mm-hmm,
Gravenstein and Professor Fontaine, and who were leading world authorities on integrated medicine. So that was my first exposure and was part of the first integrated medical doctors group in the world, which came from South Africa you know
mm.
so
Wow.
and when I was exposed to all these people and literature and knowledge, and I realized that there's something more than from a dental perspective. I'm using a crude terminology now. When the patient comes onto your chair, then the traditional dentist will open the mouth and take a few x-rays, inject you,
Mm,
do a fillings and extraction, and we call that drill, bill, and fill. Right?
mm.
Right? That's
Yeah.
it. Right? But from a holistic perspective, we take a detailed medical history, we take a detailed but we connect the dots. We connect up the medical issues and or ill health, and from a totally holistic perspective, and how as a dentist you can look at markers and how that can enable you to integrate general medicine and your general health and from a dental perspective. So when I look at a patient, I don't just look at the patient, take a history purely on the teeth. I take the patient's history on dental, but of total medical history. And I'll give you an example why is it important, right? For example, that if a patient is on medication, for example, right, two sets of medications sometimes can cause another pharmaceutical compound that can be produced that affects you with an allergy or affects in terms of your function, liver function or uptake in terms of the medication. So that's one example. The second example is that you know uh, why I embarked on this year, and generally is that people have in this present time lots of traditional mechanical work, right? For example, that we run a practice in our surgery, a non-metal practice. Everything is done very, very holistically, and everything is done more naturally as possible. And the second thing is that we tend to sort of look at the whole body solution. So, so from a dental perspective, but we integrate with a network of practitioners, whether it's a physician, a pediatrician, or whether it's an Ayurvedic medicine practitioner or homeopath. So, and craniosacral therapy. So we look at things integrative but complementary. So whereby we realize that we know all of the answers. But when I do the treatment plan for a patient, so we have a plan of action not only for the teeth or the jaw, but we have a plan of action how to improve a patient's general health, right? So when that happens is that at the end of the treatment schedule, I always just tell the patients, I have a lot of utmost patience for this journey. So when we finish the patient from a dental perspective, but also we make sure medically the patient is in an optimal state of health, right? And that's the reason why we are called holistic dental medicine. So it's a total whole body approach, but it's we use no metal, and we try not to use what you call BPA. BPA is a bisphenol effects in lots of filling material. There are many side effects, and we don't tend to cut tissue. We tend to sort of preserve tissue, whether the teeth, whether the gums, and we try to treat it holistically without minimal extractions or minimal amount of root canal therapies and minimal amount of so-called crowns and bridges. So everything is what they call minimalistic invasion. I hope that helps the background, Prenisha.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So in a person's mouth, so when they're lying there on your chair, um, there's, I'm guessing, there's certain signs in the mouth that will tell you how healthy a person's gut is or how good their nutrition is. For example, like if the tongue is like pale and puffy, it means something. Or if the gums are black, it means something. Um, how true is that?
Yes, I mean that is absolutely fascinating. In terms of what you just said now, and I just want to encapsulate, in terms of what we call systemic health in oral, what you call uh, in dentistry, if you may call it, and because and the mouth is obviously a window to the world, and a number of systemic conditions and diseases that affect the oral health systemically or due to physical inability to maintain appropriate oral hygiene, and it manifests in the mouth. I'll give you an example, right? If a patient has iron deficiencies, that's a common thing that in today's time because of the lack of uptake of the iron, and we see it in the mouth. The color is very pale, very pale in the mouth. The circulation of the blood flow is not uniform in the mouth, and so those are the two things in iron deficiency. And but in addition to that, from an oral perspective, but also look at the patient nails. So if the patient nails are very pale, and that tells us it's also iron deficient. And even the palate itself of the upper palate, that's very pale, and that also tells us the patient is iron deficiency. And the second thing is that, which is very common thing in today, people talk about cholesterol levels, high cholesterol, what we know as the bad cholesterol, which is called, the LDLs, the lipid density lipolipids. And so that tells us if a patient is at high cholesterol, the texture of the soft tissues in the mouth and the color from pale yellowish to slightly red or slightly pinkish. So that alteration in color and the texture tells us the patient may be prone to potential cholesterol levels. That's the one thing. The second thing about cholesterol levels,
Yes.
very interesting, is that when you uh, take an X-ray, right, of a patient, what we call is a panoramic X-ray. On the
Mm,
collarbone, we see what you call microscopic radio opacity. Opacities mean whiteness on the collarbone. So sometimes dentists overlook that, and it's often the most cardinal effect to show that you've got early problems with your cholesterol levels. It's fascinating
mm,
what that can give you,
mm,
you know. And
mm,
then the third thing is that what we call oral burns in the mouth, whether to the tongue, people who smoke pipes, people who smoke cigarettes in the mouth, the heat reaction of vapors in the mouth. That shows in the mouth and the color in the manifestations, that how the systemic factors are demonstrated that in the mouth. So basically is that if the patient is not an optimal health, so the color tells you there's a iron deficiency, technically there's a bit of malnourishment in the mouth. And the other aspect on the mouth is that the mouth is too dry. That means the pH is affected from a alkaline to an acidic state. That gives an idea that you may be eating the healthy foods, but your combination of foods may be wrong, right? I'll give you an example that,
mm,
we tend to have beans and
mm,
potatoes, a carbohydrate and a protein. You shouldn't have that. You shouldn't combine a lot of acidic fruits. For example, a lot of the tropical fruits, what we
mhm,
know, for example, a lot of oranges, apples, and
mm,
pineapples together. So that affects your pH levels from an alkaline, to an acidic levels, right? And the common thing which
yes.
in the
Okay.
so-called population of South Africa today across all race groups is the increase of percentages of what you call blood sugar levels, diabetes. In adults, we call it type 2 diabetes, whereby the blood sugar levels are affected, and that often manifests in the mouth. In which areas? In the areas closest to the gum tissue, where your gums are highly inflamed, your gum tend to bleed. The reason for that important aspect is that what we call microvasculation. That means your blood vessels tend to narrow in diabetic patients, right? And when they narrow, that means your blood flow, right, is not uniform. And result of that, because the blood is the biggest antioxidant, and plaque and calculus tend to develop more to the minimum of irritation of foods that are residual in the part that's adjacent to the gum and the tooth, and that in turn causes loss of gum tissue, eventually loss of bony tissue. And that's why we got in diabetic patients, people tend to have loss of teeth early because they lose ligament
Mm,
support early and the teeth become loose. So
mm,
diabetes is a very devastating thing and can be devastating in the mouth, because if you lose your teeth early, it affects your confidence, it affects your chewing, it affects your functionality, and the most important, it affects your personality. And the third thing is that about diabetes and the oral cavity, it causes bad odor, bad odor in the mouth. When you have when you have gum diseases, and can be caused by diabetes or can be caused by poor oral hygiene, can be caused by high intake of smoking, tobacco, and these things. The other thing I want to
mm,
touch about, Prenisha, what you just said now, the oral manifestation of the mouth, is stress factors.
mm,
Stress factors also affect uh, decrease in uniform blood supply and color, which we see in the mouth. So stress is also
mm,
a big indication of what you see in the mouth. So the mouth, Prenisha, in
mm,
that summary, is a mirror to the world. And we just came off a
yes.
pandemic now, in
Mm,
with COVID and the COVID-19 viruses and all. And sorry, Pranisha, did you hear me?
no worry. Yes, can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, Pranisha. I'm just trying to put the volume on.
Oh,
We had the problem last week. You can hear me?
yes, yes.
Yeah. So what happened is that we had this in the mouth that with COVID-19. So if the dentist was very
Mm,
alert to the situation at the early stages, so we could have picked up signs and symptoms from the oral cavity, that early signs of discrepancies in color and those kinds of things, that is in the
mm,
mouth, you know.
mm.
So
Yes.
so the mouth is a big is a big mirror, you know.
Mm. So what can we do today, Dr. Reddy, to increase our nutrition? How can we start shifting things from today?
Sorry, Prenisha, you went very soft on the on your tone there.
Oh, sorry. I was just asking, what can people do today to shift things in their nutrition? What small changes can they make?
Um, yeah, I think this is I think what was a very important question, right? What can we start doing immediately to change our nutrition? Very important is to look at firstly, ideally, all of us should grow our own foods. Ideally, right?
Yeah,
Whether to
yeah.
from the ground or from growing in pots, I think that's about the ideal that we can do. What I normally tell my patients that document exactly what you're eating for 21 days, right? Right. It's called the law of
Mm,
21. So
okay.
you look at 21 days and you look at the situation of what can you do. So when you analyze your nutrition 21 days, you realize that what are the foods that affect you positively and what foods affect me negatively, right? So in terms of
Mm, mm,
starting with immediate effect, I would recommend that decrease your carbohydrates,
okay,
right? Number
okay.
one. Number two is that decrease the intake of cooking with a lot of uh, toxic oils. If using oils, it should be cold pressed oils. The oil should be either
Cold.
like coconut oil or groundnut oil, ideally, and using one of the
Okay,
seed oils. It's cold pressed olive oil or cold pressed grapeseed oil. I think that is a great start in terms of changing your nutritional intake. The second thing is that you must understand that what helps our digestion, our microbiomes in our colon, right? So I think the first thing one must realize that live foods like fruits and vegetables need to be eaten first,
mhm,
right?
okay.
What is the reason for that? The reason for that, the live foods affect your pepsin,
Mm-hmm.
right? The
Okay,
pepsin
okay,
affects your digestive tract and breaks down your whole foods, whether in terms of your fats or carbohydrates or your complex proteins and all that. So I think that's the first thing to do. So I think that to change your nutrition, live foods are first. Secondly, is
okay,
that try to understand combination of foods, whether in fruits or whether in salads, or also in terms of cooking wise. I said to you earlier on about proteins and carbohydrates. Try not to eat too much of mixed foods, right?
okay.
And so
Mhm.
the thing is that, and there is a thing called and eating earlier than later. That means if you're having a big lunch, you should have, right, or sometimes have a light supper, right?
Okay,
And there's
okay,
some signs to say that you should eat in terms of when you are hungry only. So don't try to eat too much of tidbits, right? Over there.
okay, okay.
So what is the understanding of that? If you have whole foods, which are what you call slow release food, that means where the sugars break down in a sustained released way, and not like high sugars or junk food causes quick energies that in a vertical direction. Slow release food. I think that is important. Like example, some of the nuts, some of the sprouts, and we can talk about it just now, right? So I
Mhm.
think that understand that um, you have to understand that when does your digestive tract activate itself optimally? When you allow your digestive tract
Okay,
to be at rest. So, example, technically, if you have your supper at 6 o'clock in the evening, your next meal should be
Mm-hmm.
only at 8 o'clock the next day, right? Because there's some
Okay.
science to show that 14 hours of digestive juices and tracts breaks down the foods optimally, right? The second
Okay.
thing is that you should have optimal water intake slowly throughout the whole day.
Slowly,
Thirdly, is
yeah.
that in the morning, what should be your intake? Hot water, slice of lemon, and cloves. So lemon gives you a
Okay.
vitamin C. The water helps your fluid levels, and cloves as an antioxidant. I think to start
Oh,
off with, those changes we can make immediately. In summary, is that your water intake, your
wow.
morning hot drinks, your eat after 14 hours in the evening, have a substantial lunch, but have a light supper, and try not to combine foods
Mm.
together. I hope that helps, Pranisha.
Yes, it does. Just quickly on Facebook, Carmen, what Dr. Reddy was saying is a way to sort of analyze your nutrition is to create or have a journal and do it for 21 days. For 21 days, you look at every day and see, what foods make you feel good, foods make you feel bad. Sometimes we have an allergic reaction, which is like bloating sometimes, cramp. So when you have this journal, it will give you a deeper insight as to what your nutrition is, because I feel like everybody's nutrition is different, and we will get to that in a later stage at how nutrition differs from each person. But Dr. Reddy was saying for 21 days to keep a journal, and that will give you a deeper insight as to where your nutrition lies and what we can improve on. I hope that answers your question. Um, where were we? Yes, Dr. Reddy, what superfoods can we eat to get better sleep or to lower stress and anxiety? Because a lot of people today, if you ask them, the main thing that they're feeling is stress or anxiety or they can't sleep. So what foods can people eat now that will help with that?
Okay, Prince, I'm going to break it up into break up the question into two parts, right? The first thing is I just want to highlight some common superfoods, right? All the berries are very good. The natural berries, and what I'm calling again garden fruits. What you grow in your garden, like lemons, or you grow whatever fruits you grow in the gardens, are usually very good. Avocados are very good. All the nuts are very good. Whether it's almond is a great brain food, right, and gives you vitamin B12, and it's a great food in terms of the neuronutrients. Things like spinach are very good. Kale, broccoli, and lots of the things you can grow in the garden. You know, and I
Okay.
mean, I mean, people tell me you can also grow spirulina. I know for a fact that sweet potatoes are great superfoods which you can grow in your own garden, right? And foods which are a
Mm.
little more slightly expensive is like quinoa, but I would recommend
Yes.
that from definitely all the berries. Mulberries grow in the gardens very easily, you know, uh, you know,
Mm.
um, and instead of having normal bread, wheat bread, we can bake our own breads. For example, using rye flour or a bit of soya flour, rice flour. There's a lot of things that we can do so to improve the sources of what we call superfoods, right? Right. So just want to ask you, like, to answer the next part of the question, the stress levels, and what affects it, and what affects in terms of your sleep, and let's understand first sleep and stress. I think there's a great correlation when you don't sleep well is because you stress, and then so how can the correct diet or nutrition nutrition affects it. So definitely we know that your sleep is affected by your stress, and if you don't have regular sleep habits or you don't sleep properly, so it's a vicious cycle, of
Yeah.
stress levels. You don't eat properly, you eat junk food, you have poor food choices, and then unfortunately poor food choices creates greater anxiety. Greater anxiety causes greater poor sleep, and I think that one must understand that it's converse and reverse. Sleep deprivation affects the body intake, in terms of your understanding of how your body knows when to sleep and when not to sleep, right? Sometimes, what thing called power naps helps a lot, you know and so
Yeah.
so we have, what you call in the brain, neurotransmitters that tells us, the brain, when to consume food, when to consume a few calories. So when you don't sleep properly, your neurotransmitters that release a message when to eat and when not to eat is affected. That's the reason why the sleep is almost like critical, that you must have be restful. And in order, in terms of your stress levels, how do you get affected by it? Because you understand that if you don't sleep properly and your neurotransmitters cannot tell you when to eat or when to consume your calories, and and how that in terms of your food choices. So we find that people who are stressed don't to have very good food habits. They tend to have quick foods, and tend to order online, Uber Eats, or whatever it may be. But I think
Yeah.
that one needs to be very, very careful with that. What we find that, in terms of helping sleep patterns of nutrient intake, is a high fiber intake, right? So things like oatmeal, oat bran, nuts, some of the beans, and I spoke to you earlier on, eating fruits and vegetables first. So definitely caffeine and these things don't tend to affect this positively, right? And in terms of your sleep patterns. So, but I think definitely if you concentrate on the food that I mentioned now, and I think that will be a great effect. So the other things that affect sleep patterns, Prenisha, is excessive sugar intake. Can cause you to wake up more frequently. Can ask you to wake up and whether to urinate more frequently. Sugars affect you that very profoundly. So if you have a lot of foods and very close to bedtime, that it leads to poor. So this definitely, you should not eat drink anything, at least my experiences, for 3 hours before you sleep. If you have your last meal at 7 and sleep at 10, make sure you have a cutoff time. You must give your body rest to assimilate the food.
Okay.
So I think that it's important to realize that do not have high density foods at night. You can have, I mean, I have myself a glass of hot water with lemon, and if I have to have it after my meals. The reason for the hot water, Pranisha, and not cold water, that when you have foods which are cooked on heat with oils or fats, for example, any of the oils, or whatever it may be, right? So the hot water breaks down the so-called high density carbohydrates and the complex foods and the lipids and these things, which are in terms of being cooked. And cold water should be had before meals, not after meals. So it's very important how you eat and when you eat.
Dr. Reddy, can you please just clarify for us? Because a lot of people think, you're talking about high sugars. A lot of people think if they just cut out sugar, like king sugar in their tea or something, that sugar levels will go down, but that's not necessarily true. Can you please explain to us how carbs become sugars, or that, just because you cut out sugar in your tea doesn't mean your blood sugar levels are going to decrease? Can you please explain what happens in the body when it comes to sugars and what sugar actually means? And it's not just sugar, table sugar.
Yes, and this is a very, very vital, fundamental question that people think, oh, because I'm not having sugars, I'm fine. But sugars come
Yeah.
from complex carbohydrates, whether it's from
Mm-hmm.
chocolates, whether it's from normal sweets, besides, what we call added sugars. But all your carbohydrates breaks down into what you call carbon six sugars. And carbon
Okay.
six sugars are a problem. Carbon five sugars, with the fruit sugars, is less of a problem. But excess of carbon 5 sugars also causes a problem because it affects your pH. When your pH is affected to an acidic state, because technically, if you're healthy, you are in an alkaline state. So carbohydrates definitely is a big culprit in breaking down and availability of sugars. People have asked me these questions about, can we have honey as opposed to sugar? Yes, you can have honey. Honeys have a glycemic index of about 21, right? And carbon 6 sugars of glycemic index of close to 100. So definitely honey, but again, it's about the quantity of honey. If you want honey has many trace elements, these things. Then there's another part of honey, what we call is honeycomb. Honeycomb which is more nutritious in terms of nutrients and trace elements, is that the honeycomb, you have a half a teaspoon or quarter teaspoon a day. It has a bit of fiber in it. But the most important thing, the glycemic index of honeycomb is close to 7, which is much lower than honey, which is close to 21.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Does it cover that question, Prenisha, or should I?
Yes. Yes, it does. Just another question popped up in my head.
Yeah.
So a lot of people say you must drink apple cider vinegar if your sugar levels are too high. How does apple cider vinegar then bring down sugar levels? Is apple cider vinegar then not acidic?
Yes, I think there's a big what can I say, a discussion today, and about apple cider vinegar. And I often get this question asked very often, in the practice. And
Yes.
there is some scientific evidence to show that organic apple cider vinegar is very nutritious, and in terms of its effects of what it does. And I think you need to understand that in terms of the science showing that it helps to break down what you call fats in terms of losing weight, and in terms of that is the first thing. Secondly, is that commonly what we call is type 2 diabetes, right? That I think that is a big factor. We know that apple cider vinegar affects that. And in terms of the heartburn, it relieves the heartburn. And the fourth thing is that we know that it affects your LDL. LDL is your bad cholesterol. It lowers that, right? And some signs
Okay.
to show that people who stand a lot on the feet have varicose veins, and the apple cider vinegar tend to sort of create patency of the blood flow in your vein, because technically the arteries move away from your heart, and the venous flow more towards your heart. So the varicose veins that we know that very pronounced, and there's some signs to show that it helps a lot. And there's something about apple cider vinegar from people who are cosmetologists, and they often use apple cider vinegar on the face in a diluted form, and acts as a deep cleanser and reduces acne. Right?
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And other effects that in terms of apple cider vinegar, and we know for a fact that it affects your scalp positively in terms of reducing dandruff, and from a dental perspective. And I know people that brush their teeth, with the apple cider vinegar, and they told me that the teeth becomes whiter, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But I've had people telling me this very positively, and they've seen this, in terms of that, And if you answer your question, is apple cider vinegar, is it alkaline, or is it acidic? I think that's a point
Yes.
that I think that you are trying to lead to me. You see, in addition
Yes.
to what you call acetic acid, right? Apple cider vinegar may contain a small amount of what you call is the science tell you citric acid and malic acid. So the pH of apple cider vinegar, we know from the scientific aspect, is around 2 to 3, which is considered to be mildly acidic. That's the science
Yes.
behind it, right?
Okay.
Right. So
Okay.
it's not acidic in terms of reaching high levels of or beyond 7. 7 is ideal in terms of the alkalinity, and because apple cider vinegar contains a bit of acetic acid, which has an alkalizing effect on the body. So the acetic acid in apple cider vinegar alkalizes the body. I mean, myself, you ask me what I do with apple cider vinegar. Whenever I feel that my body needs to be alkalized, or I feel that I may have been to a conference like I was over the last few days, and I came back, I didn't eat optimally, I would have an apple cider vinegar in my last drink at night, whatever drink, in my lemon juice or chicory or whatever it may be, and that helps my digestive effect, but alkalizing. The reason to be alkaline, as I always say, in an alkaline state, you're always in a healthy state. That's why it's important to be in this. So in terms of the acetic acid, there's some science to show that it reduces sugar cravings.
Okay.
Right, so that helps a lot. The second thing about sugar cravings as well, and we get people to have small amounts of ginger, right, and which is suck on the tongue, but they're also used for people who tend to smoke a lot, so how to reduce to reduce that kind of habit, so I think you understand that it's a combination of things that in terms of apple cider vinegar. I often ask this question, in terms of the pH. Vinegar is slightly more acidic than lemon juice, so since acidity is a catalyst in coagulate, we have to understand that vinegar is ultra acidic, and apple cider vinegar, because acetic acid results in that in the pH is about 2 to 3. So I think that one needs to understand that very clearly. You can't have just vinegar, but you should definitely, if you want to alkalize your body, break down fatty tissues, reduce weight, get your blood sugar, is apple cider vinegar, not normal vinegar.
Okay. Okay.
And Prenisha,
Since
something
we
very
still talking
interesting.
about
Something
yeah.
very interesting about apple cider vinegar, right? As well, and there's a positive effect in your heart health. How that works? Example, it lowers sometimes the potassium levels in your bloodstream, right? So if your sodium levels are very high or very low, and your potassium levels are very high, apple cider vinegar can equalize your sodium potassium balance, which affects your heart rate positively.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But one
I
needs to be
just
careful that people who got a low potassium level, they shouldn't take
yeah.
a lot of apple cider vinegar.
Okay. I know you're talking about sodium. And when it comes to blood pressure, a lot of people then will stop eating salt so that the pressure can come down. But what I found is that sometimes you'll be eating salt, but your body doesn't necessarily absorb the salt. Um, and that's why you can still get dizzy sometimes and things like that, or you can feel thirsty or whatever it is. So what can people do to have a better absorption of the salt so they don't have too much salt that will then increase your blood pressure?
Yeah. I think, Prisha, that this is I think that this is a startling question, and it's a known fact that salt, because it's sodium chloride, and yeah, it
Yeah,
affects your blood pressure, negatively by increasing your blood pressure. So technically, is that you don't need salt to cook if you get the combination of foods right, because all foods have a percentage of sodium chloride in it from the absorption of
okay,
foods in the ground, whether it's nuts, whether
okay,
it's a green leafy vegetable, all of them, this, right? Definitely. So we know that excessive salt increases your blood pressure, right? In terms of understanding that, right? Do you need salt or don't you? So I think that let's ask that question, right? Right. I think that technically is that because we and been used to having salt, and people often, if you go to a restaurant anywhere, they always have pepper and salt, right? You know what I'm saying to you, right?
yeah,
And so, but technically,
yeah,
you don't need salt, right? And I think this is important
okay,
to understand that, right? So it says salt is absorbed basically from where? Your gastrointestinal tract. In your gastrointestinal tract, what you call is your microbiomes, right? So your microbiomes in your gastrointestinal tract, or what they call the correct balance of the bacteria, must be in an optimal state, right? So that's the reason you find that people who have a lot of salt tend to be very, very thirsty. they have more salt and more salt, right? And over there, because salt creates a of process of dehydration. So to get the correct absorption of sodium, right, basically from the salt from the gastrointestinal, so you need a correct balance in your GIT. So we know that there are foods like the correct yogurts, or we know things like kefir, and there is some artificial microbiomes that does that, and we know the things like apple cider vinegar also affects your gut health positively, and that results in your
Oh,
sodium absorbed correctly. So people say when I'm deficient, whether it's sodium, whether it's vitamins or whatever it is, it's usually the problem of absorption. It's not deficient because the body is like a periodic table, contains
yeah.
all the elements that the Lord of the universe has given you, right? So that's the
Mm.
reason why is that to understand that you're not deficient, but the problem is absorption. Like I said, salt is from the GIT, gastrointestinal. If your gut health is not good, your sodium will not be absorbed correctly.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah, I hope
How
that
how do we get our gut health? How do we get it to absorb? What how do we so probiotics?
yes, but live probiotics, not the one over the counter, not the one over the
Oh,
shelf.
okay.
Right?
Mm.
Right. The live probiotics you buy, that's kept in the fridge. So you know what? So if you're buying probiotics that's on the counter, is just you just adding to your pocket of gross expense, but minimal effects of absorption. The only probiotics works the ones which are live in the fridge, right?
Oh,
And kefir, once you learn how to make kefir, it can be very good. You know, I mean, it's easy to make, and and you could do it very easily. And I mean, there's a thing called you may have heard what you call mean kombucha.
yeah.
Kombucha is as well. I mean, you can make it in terms of a drink, in terms of a tea, but it is a fermented drink, as you know, right? Right, it's slightly effervescent, and you can make it with black tea, and you can have this, it's type of tea basically that is, I mean, fermented, but it's a great source of what they call probiotics because it's live.
Mm.
And that is the big thing. And you can flavor it. After making with
Mm.
black tea, there's a recipe you can get, and you could add a bit of juice, a bit of spice into it, a bit of black pepper or ginger. Some
Mm.
people even add a bit of cayenne pepper that affects your health positively.
So
And I think that it's a very similar effect, if I may say, that to a bit of apple cider vinegar. So I think that your gut health is everything. I think if you get your gut health, you often uh, add your body effect, because that's the digestion of fire basically, right? And
mm.
so that is a very critical stage. So to get optimal absorption, your gut health needs to be in optimal state, right? And if that happens, that it prevents things like potential other complications in your body, where you're prone to more infections, more viral attacks, loss of hair, your nails, and lots of other things that has been, kombucha has been around for a long time, and I think
Mm.
that it's important to realize that, and these are not very costly things. I mean, probiotics of the shelf are very costly, cost you 250, 300 rand,
Mm. So then, would fermented things then be good for your gut, like kimchi or sauerkraut? There's a lot of vegetables that you can ferment. Would that also then be good for your gut?
Yes, it can be. Yeah. I think definitely. I think kimchi. You know what? As a food source, in terms of what we're talking about, it's a very simple. As you know, it is a Korean dish. It's basically, what is it? It's salted and fermented vegetables.
Mm.
And a bunch of cabbage and radish. That is the two main things. And then you add your garlic or ginger, onions, whatever you want to. So definitely kimchi can be very positive. And same thing is with your sauerkraut as well. I
Mm,
think that can be also help you in terms of as fermented foods, right? But
mm.
again, you see that. So this fermented food, we must understand that must be used as a therapy, as therapeutic, and not as your main diet.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. So if you use it
like side.
therapeutically, it will
Yeah.
benefit you. But definitely,
Okay.
because the people are investing a lot on probiotics, I will definitely not recommend buying the dried ones over the counter. But kefir, you can make it, or you can buy kefir, the sauerkraut, the kimchi. Definitely, you can do apple cider vinegar, kombucha. You could do. These are not expensive things. And I think that when things are too expensive, that you shouldn't buy.
Yes, I was going to ask about, a lot of people when you say you need to look at your nutrition and you got to eat healthy and things like that. A lot of people say, no, it's too expensive. It's cheaper to just buy, a polony or uh, cheaper foods. But what other options are there that people can um, that's not expensive but still healthy? I know we talked about, planting your own vegetables. I think that's a good idea. But what other things can people do that's cheaper for them so that they don't think that being healthy means being, broke because you're buying expensive stuff?
Yeah, and my philosophy is this: all packaged foods are too expensive. Whether you're buying sugar,
Hold
you're
on, Dr.
buying
Reddy,
rice.
we can't hear you. Uh,
Can you hear me now, Prenisha?
Not really. I don't know how. Let's turn off and then
Just
let's turn on. See if you can turn on your microphone there, Dr. Reddy, please.
hello, Prenisha. Can you hear me now?
Ay, ay, ay.
Now?
um, let's see if I can hear you now, Dr. Reddy.
Can you hear me?
Oh, let's invite Dr. Reddy back. Sorry about the technical issues, you guys. It is full moon. This is what happens around tech. Hello?
Okay, I'm back. Can you hear
Yay!
me?
Yes. These things always happen over
Ye-
full moon, you guys. The energies are all over the place. Tech just crashes.
Uh, yes, yes, yeah. So we were talking about the cost of foods and whether it can be expensive
Yeah.
or cheaper superfoods and those things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is that is that
Yes.
is that correct, Pranisha? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Definitely, I can tell you, Pranisha, that the critical factor is about healthy food is not necessarily having an expensive outlet, or, for example, buying expensive probiotics and these things. My philosophy is that
Mm-hmm.
to eat healthy, you should try to grow your foods either in limited space through pots of growing. For example, you could make a nice mint tea. You don't have to buy expensive teas, right? And you could make a healthy drink with lemon and lemon water, lemon juice, and so if you buy expensive things, you must always look for food that you can grow easily, and look at foods you
Mm-hmm.
buy not in pre-packaged as far as possible, right? And
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think that if you, for example, that if you're going to look at you buy in the free markets, or you buy wherever it may be, or some of the bigger fruits and veg shops, and I think you mustn't buy packaged fruits or packaged vegetables, or packaged food as much as you can, right? And I want to give you a
Mm.
simple hint about superfoods which are least expensive, is called
Okay.
sprouting, right? And there are four kinds of
Mm.
sprouts that gives you all your nutrients you need. Number one is your green hello,
Yes, you're back.
hello,
Can you
Prenisha?
hear me?
You heard me?
Yes, I
Yeah,
can
I can
hear
hear
you.
you.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was telling you, one of the great foods to buy is not to buy, but is to buy a sprouter, right? Right, a sprouter
Okay.
is one of the um, uh, right, and I think it's a great innovation because it allows you to four sprouts to do. One is your green mung dal, sunflower
Mhm.
seeds, your alfalfa, and chickpeas. So basically, what do these foods do? You grow them in short sprouts, medium, and long sprouts. So
Okay.
each degree of sprouts give you variables amount of nutrition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these are not expensive things to do. So that can be your sustained intake in terms of using it with the rice or of rye flour or rye bread or the sourdough bread, whatever it may be. You add that to your food to give nutrition. Now, chickpeas is one of the great superfoods that we know, right? And they say that half a cup of chickpeas give you all your nutrients you need, your fiber, your protein, and your trace elements. It's a great superfood. Like, and sweet potatoes is not an expensive food. Things that grow in your garden, your spinach, your mulberries, your blackberries can grow. And I think a lot of things you can grow out of your own things. So I think don't look at investing in packaged foods, but look at all around you that you can use and how you can cook. For example, you don't have to overcook foods, right? I
Mm.
think that overcooked foods you deplete the nutrients, right? So
Mm.
I think
Mm.
that that's my big take. My own self, we do a lot of sprouting at home, and we try to live a lot of the land, and obviously that in winter, you have to cover your in especially in Johannesburg,
Yeah.
with the frost bedding cloth to prevent frost getting affected vegetables. But that's my advice:
Mm.
eat off the land and sprout a lot, and you can buy the nuts which are not expensive, not packaged nuts. I mean, there are a lot of things you could buy unpackaged.
Mm. Okay. We just have a few comments on Facebook. Um, it says also the traditional Indian way of making pickles through the process of fermentation is also great for the gut. And then also comment says, I'm making tepache. I hope I pronounced that well. I'm sorry if I butchered that. Um, she says it's a fermented pineapple drink that has been made in Mexico for centuries. And I thank you for bringing that up, Carmen. A lot of the older people, the older generation, that they lived to 100 and over 100, were very strong and stuff like that. And they didn't have the kind of medicines that we have, although they are stronger. So a lot of what the older people used to do when it comes to health seems to have worked better than modern medicine. That's just my opinion because, again, they were growing their own fruits and vegetables back in the day. There weren't, pesticides, there weren't things covered in wax. The soil was better as well. And I think the older people, although we don't know where their knowledge came from, they knew like ginger was good for you, they knew garlic was good for you. So a lot of what the older generation has brought us up on seems to be, I'd like to say it's the superfood, like what a lot of what the older generation tends to give us. When we're sick, they'll make a concoction and it will work. It's just fascinating how they knew things, and here we have science and technology, but it's just, according to me, the older generation, those concoctions still seem to work better.
No, it's fascinating. I mean, I call it good granny's remedies, right?
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Right. I'll give you a good example here. I have these younger families who are my patients, and the children who don't sleep properly. I often tell them, ask the grandmother to give the baby a good massage with sesame seed oil under the feet, under the body,
Mm.
and the emotional touch is one thing. And the sesame oil acts as a
Yeah.
natural anti-inflammatory, is good for the skin, and children sleep like a dream. and
Mm.
uh, and and I could recall it that you're talking about expensive things, right? There again, I'm going to give you a simple thing that can grow in our garden is a camphor plant. You know, so
Mm.
basically is that the camphor plant, and you crush it and you wrap it around on your chest. If your child or somebody is not well, and creates degree of warmth and it affects your chest positively.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Just.
and for example, to hydrate yourself, you can make a beautiful tea of mint and rooibos tea, and you can get it chilled, and you can put it in the fridge and drink it in
Mm.
summer, you know, and
Yes. Yes.
and winter, turmeric is becoming a big thing. What we call, they call it, they make turmeric in lattes now, a turmeric latte and all that, and turmeric is a
Mm.
great antioxidant, is a great antimicrobial, and
Mm.
there's a capsule called biocurcumin. Biocurcumin is basically is a high quality turmeric. It's got rhizo and is very good as an antimicrobial. So turmeric is natural. Turmeric as well is not expensive. You can buy turmeric and use it in your food. I mean, fresh turmeric,
Yeah.
and you can even grow it like ginger.
Mm. Although, just make sure you don't touch dishcloths or anything white. No, white with father will kill you.
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
yeah. So Dr. Reddy, we are talking about nutrition, but also lifestyle. So what does it mean? People say, no, you need a lifestyle change. What does that mean? And do you have any tips? Because it's very easy to stick to your routine. It's very easy to stick to what it's easier to grab the bag of chips or the slab of chocolate rather than going for nuts or a salad or things like that. um what does it mean to have a lifestyle change, and do you have any tips as to how we can transition into that lifestyle a bit more easily, because sometimes it gets like overwhelming.
Yeah, yeah. One of the biggest lifestyle changes that I have myself introduced of changes in terms of my diet when I'm hungry, and I may not have sufficient time to eat. I would have a few dates and have a few cashews together. And the reason for the dates again is carbon five sugars. It has slow release effects, but also has iron in it,
Mhm.
which is
Yes.
a great thing. And the second thing is that, I don't want people to spend a lot of money again on iron tablets. One of the biggest things about iron is about iron absorption. Is to decrease your sugars and your coffee. And the simple thing is to have raisins. You take raisins, you put it in a small bowl of hot water at night, and you throw the water out. Obviously you can recycle that water, and you could put that in terms of recycling. But that raisins develops a pranic energy, swells up. So the raisins eventually produces your iron levels optimally into when you eat raisins. So raisin and dates.
Wow.
So those are the two important things in terms of, yeah, but they're superfoods, but great in terms of nutrition wise, right?
Mm.
So,
Yes.
and I think it's very important. The whole world, is talking about lifestyle change. We came out of a pandemic where people were working from home, and now people are working hybrid models. People realize that working from home is yet to stay, but they develop a hybrid model, office and work, and in terms of how do we bring that balance. So, in terms of that aspect, and the second aspect in terms of how do we decrease our stress levels, how do we become more healthy, how do we become more dependent on ourselves than dependent on the pharmacy and the medical practitioners. I think these are
Mm.
important things which I will take one at a time to discuss. The first thing I just want to discuss about
Oh,
what the pandemic did in
yes.
terms of nutrition and lifestyle there. So what happened in the pandemic? People were sat at the office desk more at home. They tend to
Mm.
have rounded shoulders, and they sat at the
Mm.
chair, and they would move less. They would work long hours, an undisturbed way, and then they would get hungry, and they would look for snacking foods, quick foods, whether that in the foods of um, chocolates or quick eating, which is not healthy, or just quickly order an Uber Eats something to eat, and they would do
Mm.
that. So that kind of
Mm.
eating while working is not good, because I said
Mm.
early on today
Mm.
that your food breaks down into a fundamental nutritional intake that affects your blood vessels and your neuronutrients, your nerve conductions. So
Mm.
understand that. So when you have bad eating habits at the desk level, your shoulders are rounded, your posture is affected, and you put on weight around your navel, and because you're not dedicating the time. So when you have a
Mm.
split nutrition levels from working on the screen, because the screen on the computer produces a thing called EMR, electromagnetic radiation. Also, that too many multi-plugs at home and too many plugs and all these things. All these things
Mm.
affects what you call electromagnetic radiation that then affects your digestion and your nutrition, right? So I
Mm.
think that
Mm.
one needs to look at in terms of working from home and how do you alter that. My advice to everybody working
Mm.
from home is that have demarcated disciplines of I'm working 8 to 10, I'm taking a break 10 to 10:30, and I will catch
Mm.
up and will work a little later on. I think
Mm.
demarcated discipline times are critical. If you
Yeah.
are eating more snacks at home, make sure they say that you should brush your teeth if you're eating during the day. After every meal, you should brush your teeth minimally. That means if you're
Mm.
eating 5 times a day, make sure you brush 5 times a day, right? Right, because
Okay.
plaque accumulates very quick. So during
Mm.
the pandemic, we saw lots of gum and bone diseases in the mouth, right?
Mm.
People had a lot of compromised health problems, more dental decay, more malnutrition,
Mm.
right? And
Mm.
I think this is what happened here in the mouth. So as a result of that, what happens in the mouth, as I said earlier on, affects your seven systemic effects on your health effects. So I think this is critical to understand that. So what happens when you work from home? Right? Working from home and houses are not designed in terms of what you call an open plan situation. So walls
Mm.
and passages in offices and in houses produce a thing called standing waves. Standing waves affect your electronic balance in your system, because what you call your biophysics in your
Yes.
system. And that
Mm.
in turn affects your pH, what you call is your biochemistry, and that in terms of making you more acidic, and then affects your health negatively. So I think
Mm.
that one needs to understand that
Mm.
what working from home does. So in terms of understanding that we alter that change in discipline, make sure you do an evaluation of your nutrition intake, where you buy your foods. And the critical factor in this whole thing is that do not look for quick fixes or quick eating. Dedicate the
Yeah.
time to eat only on eating. And there's some sign to show that Korean photography has shown that if you pray on a plate of food, the vibrational stage around your food is different as people who do not pray around the food and watching television. So that affects the vibration on your foods. So do not watch
Mm.
television as people do and eat at the same time, because the nutritional uptake is affected the uptake of the food. The second thing is that
Okay.
how do we decrease stress levels? One of the critical factors stress levels that to become less anxious. They say that wake up early, leave early, drive slowly, and arrive safely. Right. So do
Okay.
not rush on the
Mm.
road. Do not get affected by the effect of um, that you need to be at a certain point as quick as possible. I think every you do need to be very slow, very stymied, but you'll achieve the end result, because the science shows that If you rush on the road, you'll gain 5 minutes, but you won't gain a lot of time, but you get more anxiety. South African drivers
Yes.
per se are very anxious, and we tend to have what's called road rage. You get upset with the taxi driver or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think, how do we slow our pace of life down? So in this situation, so we have our diet corrected, what they call intermittent fasting. The last meal must be at 7. The day after you eat at 9, for example. Don't eat when you're hungry. They say eat only half full. Don't overeat at all. And get your microbiomes, your colon right, your digestive tract. We spoke about apple cider vinegar, kombucha, sauerkraut, kefir, all those kinds of things. Then the other important part of lifestyle change: make sure you sleep optimally and you're more
Yeah.
restful. And there's certain things
Mm.
affect you positively. Is like the relaxing music, and get into the habit of relaxing with music or having power naps, right? Do not get involved in conversations in a home front when you are agitated, when you are upset. You rather not talk. And the science says that if you're angry, you lie flat on the floor, you drink a glass of water and lie flat on the floor. Have you ever seen
Oh.
an angry person reacting when he's flat on his back? Never.
No.
Right. So if husband and wife are angry at each other, so I recommend both of them to sleep flat on the floor on the back, right?
Okay.
Right, and then have a conversation.
Mm.
Right. So music. So the important thing about lifestyle change is it's about a habit. It's about a discipline. The first thing is about
Mm.
my experience is that you do a lifestyle audit of yourself, right? And where you are. For example, every day when I leave work, I do what we call is an audit of my day. I have a small diary. I said, what made me feel good today, and so that thing I must carry off tomorrow to make it better. What did make me feel good? I must correct it. So I do an audit of myself. So you do a lifestyle audit, but you have to write it down. So it's
Yeah.
constant integrated awareness. So the most important person in life, Prenisha, is the self. Each one is important to yourself. How do you harmonize the world? How do you build our country? How do you build South Africa? Is being positive in our nation
Mm.
building. But to be in a positive
Mm.
framework, how do you take negative into a positive sense, which I think is very, very, very critical. My experience is that you must have a percentage of exercise every day. Is very important.
Okay.
Whether you do yoga,
Mm.
whether you do a bit of gymming, and whether you do cycling, whatever it is. But one of the greatest things about lifestyle change in my life is make sure when the weather conditions are conducive and good, you walk on the ground bare feet because of the electromagnetic force on the ground. To what we call, you become grounded, and to become grounded,
Yeah.
go on the ground bare feet. You know what I mean? And these are
Mm.
important things we need to do. So then you cultivate your lifestyle to say that I'm going to have what you call is a work balance, family balance, exercise balance. So you demarcate that into segments, and the effort is called the rule of 21 again. My experience that for
Mm.
21 days you generate a habit, right? It becomes a form of a discipline. But you must realize
Mm.
that we to get the correct lifestyle change is unmaking and remaking, and most importantly, replacing your ego with a transcendental consciousness. That ego, all of us got ego in ourselves. No doubt we need ego to live, but don't allow the ego to overcome you. But the most important thing, you must have a degree of my experience in life of selflessness. When we go to work, we earn a salary, we get paid. But besides that, we must realize that to do some of the things in the world, we have to realize that we have to do a percent of what does selflessness does. It helps us to share a percentage of ourselves with people who are more disadvantaged than ourselves. Whether it's through time, whether it's sharing a plate of food, whether it's through a hamper, whatever it may be, I
Mm.
think that should be ingrained in our consciousness about sharing and caring, right? and
Yes.
and I think that
Yeah.
is to avoid conflict, right? But avoid conflict is that you should talk about it, is to discuss it, right? Realize that
Mm.
we need to have a solutionist thinking. If you're positive, there's nothing that you cannot not do. That's my experience.
Yes.
So I think that
Yes.
lifestyle audit in South Africa, I think there's a great call for it. And there's a saying that if the government cannot do it, we as a population need to rise to change government. But the only way we could do this is by changing ourselves. When changing ourselves and
Yes.
collectively as a society, whether we belong to a soccer club, whether we belong to a gymming club, whether we belong to a prayer group, whether we belong to the mosque, temple, or church, but collectively we need to change. And the only thing
Mm.
collectively is by dialogue and engagement, right? So we have to have that engaging feeling and attitude of communication. And there must be the free flow. And you must realize that, and you must have what you call forgiveness, and you must have forbearance. Forgiveness is a great quality
Mm.
of healing yourself to heal the world. And that's a big lifestyle change on everybody that I would call.
Mm.
Can you hear me, Prenisha?
Yes, you are back with us.
Hello?
Just, yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much.
Can hear
Right.
us.
So I hope that that contextualizes the thing about lifestyle change and gives people some hope in realizing they can change.
Yes. I think it also
Yeah,
comes
yeah,
down to,
yeah.
continue.
Sorry, Panisha, go ahead.
No, no, you go.
Yeah, yeah, no. I said the only thing that's constant in the world about lifestyle
Mm.
change is change. That's the only thing that's
Yeah.
constant in the world, right? This
Mm.
second I'm speaking to you now is history. It's over, right? Right,
Yes, yes.
right. And so the only thing we realize that we must be so-called in a fluent stage, and we must realize that we must be able to adapt to change, and we shouldn't be so-called in the framework to say that what, I cannot change. The fact is that we know that 6,000 cells in the body on your skin changes rapidly. So I mean, there is a power to heal yourself. I said in one of our other podcasts is that if you have a fracture of your hand, heal from within and not outside of you. So the power lies within
Mm.
yourself, not outside of yourself.
That's true. That's true. I think a lot of it comes down to, when you're doing a lifestyle change, it's really putting yourself first, but understanding what that means is that our body, is a home to a soul. And, the soul can't thrive, it can't attract, it can't manifest, it can't give off love if the container that is keeping the soul is not at its optimum, if it's not healthy, if it's not happy, if it's stressed or struggling or anxious. So it's, in a sense, putting yourself first, knowing your worth, and that it means that you are part of source energy. A piece of God is within you, and we must nourish it and treasure it. And I always say, people, there's no point in going and praying if you are neglecting your body, if you are neglecting your health. Because that very same God that you're praying to is within yourself, but you are not looking after it. So I think it also comes down to understanding that you've got to put yourself first. You've got to look after the body that God gave you. You've got to look after the soul that has been given to you and enjoy it. You can't really enjoy life if you on medications 24/7 or stressed or you can't sleep or life is just sucky. I think there needs to be a level of awareness that there's something deeper, something greater when it comes to you having a lifestyle change and understanding what is important and what isn't.
Yes, yeah, yeah, and the kick, and I think you're spot on, right? And remember something, right? Happiness is part of our natural disposition to life, right? I mean, always say, be childlike, be like the baby's always happy, right? Right? There's a child within us. There's a baby within us, right? And I said to you that, I mean, happiness is what you owe to yourself, you owe to your world, you owe to society, you owe it to your family. And if you're not happy, go to the drawing board, do an audit of yourself. Ask yourself, why
Yeah.
am I not happy? Right? What's the reason for it? How can I turn sadness into happiness? I mean, as difficult as it may be, and often you know, and
Oh,
you know,
it could
smile on
be
the
the
face,
same.
and that is happiness. You know, but you can change. It's the principle of resonance. I said, but to achieve the
Mm.
uh, resonance is something needful before that. Is a constant reflection, right? You must have a spirit of reflection in your life, and then you
Yeah,
create resonance, then you create reaction. So the three
yeah.
R's is very, very key, right? And I said this
Mm.
in one of the previous podcasts, that intertwined with the
Yes,
three P's, absolutely, you have what you call patience, you have perseverance, and the purity. All of us have got a purity within us, right? And the purity of us
mm.
surface, but it surfaces when we are at equilibrium with ourselves, when we are in a balanced state in ourselves. And to reach that balanced state, what is to be in the world, but not affected by the world. Do not get compressed by the world, right? Because you're a bundle of happiness. You must tonight, everybody on this podcast say to yourself, when I'm going to sleep on this pillow, all right, I'm shedding all the negativity of the world. I'm saying to myself, right, all the burdens that I've accumulated in the day today, I offer it at the lotus feet of the Lord, right? And I reconcile myself in the spirit of forbearance and forgiveness. If you start with that premise and you of sleep, and you'll be on almost like and on balance with yourself. But if you're going to sleep with an agitated or watching a horror movie on your cell phone, but one of the things about lifestyle and change about health, how do we learn to switch off our electronics at a certain point in time? Everybody needs to decide for him or herself.
Mm.
I need to switch off electronics
Mm.
because of the electromagnetic radiation. I think there's also another big lifestyle change about bringing happiness, bringing a balance, doesn't create agitation in life, right? I think the
Mm.
heart-to-heart
Mm.
contact is what we need to re-establish, right? And
Yeah.
move away from the so-called apathetic, cold face of communication. I think that's a
Mm.
big thing. I, thi-
Yeah.
I think, obviously, would you like to phone your mother from London, sending a text message, or would your mother like to hear Prenisha's voice?
Yes. Yes. Venetia makes me laugh. I know there was a question, Venetia, that you asked. She asked about, I think it was it the raisins, whether you have, you soak it if you're iron deficient. Do you soak them at night and then have them first thing in the morning, or do you have them at night? Which is the best time to have the raisins?
No, 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 no. The raisins is done like you have it at night, right? If you're iron deficient, you start with 2 tablespoons of raisins, put it in boiling water at night, right? And use the water in your plants, and then the raisins you have in the day. You have a small portion of raisins in a small plastic container throughout the whole day. Like you carry your dates at work, you carry your nuts at work, things which you do. So and you have it during the day, not at night.
Okay, okay. Um, just before
Does
I
it answer
ask
the
my
question, Pranisha?
Yes, yes, I think it does. Also, you said, when people eat like 5 times a day, they need to brush 5 times a day. I also want to know, do you need to floss 5 times a day then also? How often should one be flossing?
Yeah, I mean, the science is telling us flossing is critical in the day and age to prevent plaque accumulation, calculus buildup, and gum health. So flossing is as important as brushing. I mean, in my case, because I'm conscious of this, I'm aware of this. I floss my teeth throughout the whole day if I eat, and I make sure and I brush my teeth at the same time. Ideally, you should floss minimally once a day, minimally, but if you floss more than that, it's ideal.
Okay. How long after you've eaten should you then brush? Because I saw a post, I don't know if this is true or not, but they said don't brush immediately after you eat because all the acidity is now gone with the food, and then when you brush, then your teeth will start to disintegrate. How true is that?
Uh, I'm not sure. I haven't heard that. That scenario, but I think that purely one point of the science of a thermal reaction in the mouth after eating, and if you drink hot water, and for example, that your oral cavity will be warm, and maybe your teeth are subjected to hot drink. I think you need to let that cool down. I would recommend about half an hour to 45 minutes after eating and drinking anything home, then brush your teeth. Because
Okay.
if you're doing something that's too hot and you brush your teeth, it causes microscopic cracks in your enamel.
Oh, okay. Okay. That makes sense. So everybody, if you have
Yeah.
questions, please put them
So I
in the
think
comments.
I think it's important.
Yes.
Yeah. No. Probably for enamel, so one needs to take the enamel, and thermal conduction and thermal variance has this problem. If you don't be careful.
Okay. So if you have any questions, guys, please put them in the comments. While we have Dr. Reddy here, any questions about health, nutrition, and lifestyle, please put them in the comments, and then we'll ask Dr. Reddy. Just before we go, Dr. Reddy, there's one question, and I think it's a pretty big question. Uh, when it comes to health and nutrition, and I said, we touched a bit about it in the beginning, but I said we'll get to it. Now they say that health and nutrition differs for each individual, but it also differs from different race groups and ethnicities. For example, like diabetes in an Indian person is more prone than diabetes in a white person. So, how true is that, firstly? And also, then how would we then change our nutrition according to our race group? Is that something that we need to look into before we change our nutrition? Because something might work for somebody and something might not work for somebody else according to their ethnicity or race.
Yeah. No. I think it's a very, very what do you call valid question, right? And I think that I think in the South African context, if I may say that, is very pertinent. And I think that it's important to accept and understand that the prevalence of you mentioned the diabetes, for example. Type 2 diabetes
Hmm.
is very high, especially amongst Indian people. And I think it's I think I haven't got the latest stats on it, but I know it's very common, very high, even in the South African uh, landscape. Uh, what we know as type 2 diabetes is very prevalent, and if I may say, it's very common, right? And I think that and I think understand that how do we deal with it, and how do we if I may say arrest it, or do we say how can we prevent it? It's still high among Indians. I think the last actors about a year ago or some time ago is between 13 to 15% in Indians. I think it's about 5 to 8% in blacks, and about 3 to 4% in whites.
Mm,
And I think that in the South African
mm,
context, that we all know that after the three cardinal aspects of health, cancer, ischemic heart diseases, and diabetes ranks number three. And in the world. And some interesting stats to show that in the South African context as well, that diabetes, high blood pressure is increasing now across the spectrum. Indians, blacks, whites, coloreds, across the spectrum. It's all related to what we spoke early on, is about lifestyle diseases, right? And I think that is
mm,
important to understand that. I mean, point of view of Indians per se, that they say that for example, the North Indians should have more rice, and the South Indians need to have more what they call, the chapatis. It's not the thick rotis; it's a light, chapatis, which is made out of basically water and either what you call flour made out of millet or rye, or even wheat flour, but very, very light. I think that's the critical
mm,
factor of changing that in terms of that. And I think one needs to understand that it's something very critical and to understand why diabetes is increasing amongst Indian population in the world, including South Africa.
Mm.
And so number one is a lack of education about diabetes and its prevention, and about even people are vegetarian, but the choices of foods, the choices of foods that they tend to have a high carbohydrate diet, lots of oils and fats, and people cook wrong, and the increased consumption of processed meats, which is a big thing, right? And the low consumption of perhaps fruits, nuts, and whole grains, and also the lifestyle we spoke earlier on, the sedentary lifestyle, less exercises, people investing in more screen time, more on the cell phone, more on the computers, iPads, all these kinds of things, diabetes linked to lifestyle, and also that there is indication the prevalence of alcoholism and smoking and tobacco ingestion, which is common now. I'm saying to you, and not only now we find that previously it was a male-dominated event, but now we find that females are also affected with these things. And so I think it's a big. Coming to the issue, example that we noticed that in a place like China, for example, just to give some data information to contextualize how China has advanced from a rural community to one of the most advanced communities in the world in terms of industrialization. But what has happened as a result of that? That the increase of the number of diabetics in the world, right? And there's some data to show that they are impinging upon now amongst a very high percentage of diabetics in the world, with about 141 million people suffering of diabetes in China, which was never this before. And it's predicted by 2020, the next 20 years, in China, there'll be 174 million. It shows that about lifestyle is about contemporary pace of life, so-called modernization of diet, of quick foods, all these effects. And China is low level of that amongst the white population, cardiac diseases are more prevalent than in the other race groups, though the evidence is showing that diabetes, blood pressure, and hypertension, because of lifestyle, is affecting all race groups in Africa across the board. It's not only just one race group anymore. So again, it comes to the point that what we spoke about early on is about lifestyle and change, right? How do we do that, right? I think it's very critical, right? And just to touch something very important about this disease profile that we saw during COVID, that people had shortness of the breath and chest tightness and combination, what you call is chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases that manifested during COVID, and with coughs and mucus and whatever it may be. And I think it's important to realize that how your correct diet can affect this in terms of dealing with these things, and I think some of the shows you that, obviously having a less oily diet, less dairy diet, and all these kinds of things affects your lung function positively. And again, I spoke about earlier on the science of yoga and pranayama, alternative nostril breathing, that definitely can affect people's blood pressure positively, combined with diet, combined with lifestyle. Again, as I said earlier on, is about the correct discipline. You know what I mean. So there's some signs to show that type 2 diabetes also has a strong link in a genetic disposition, in a family history and a family lineage, right? And I think that there is a small percentage of that to show that the risk of diabetes is high in families. For example, if the father has a type 2 diabetes, the risk factor used to be about 30%. If the mother has type 2 diabetes, the risk factor is higher. If both parents have had diabetes before, the risk factor is coming to about 70%. So there is that genetic factor. But
Mm.
in normal lifestyle diabetes situation, can it be reversed? Yes. Number one is get your BMI, your body mass in index in tune, which I think is which I think is very important, and I think that to realize that if you overweight immediately, that you decrease your weight, decrease your carb index, your sugar intakes, your general lifestyle changes. Yeah, and I think it's important to realize that you can reverse things, and I think nothing that you cannot change, but there has to be will. The same thing with high blood pressure and with high cholesterol levels. I think that these kinds of things, it's important to realize that you can reverse it. There's nothing in this world that you can, but you have to have the will to do it. You have the determination to do it. To realize that there's integrated help. If I leave, the audience with a parting shot to say that which is, as for me, has done the most profound food intake in terms of change wide. Again, Prenisha, what you said early on today, that your ancestral or the older generation or granny's foods, in terms of intake. Yeah, and the people who should live in Pretoria West or in Durban know that there's a certain herb called drumstick herbs, or what we contemporarily known as moringa, right? Right. So moringa
Moringa.
is one of the most powerful supplements, I believe, that you can take either in a dried form or in a capsulated form or in a natural form in terms of drumsticks and the drumstick herbs. You could do that, right?
Mm.
And the science tells us moringa is sometimes more vitamin C available than oranges. It's 10 times more vitamin A than carrots. It's 17 times more
Mm.
calcium than milk, and 9 times more protein than yogurt, and 15 times more potassium than bananas, and 25 times more iron than spinach.
Wow.
Right?
Mm.
So if I can ask everybody
That's
on
a
this call
super, super.
today, superfoods today, if one food they can get into the diet and it's not an expensive food, you can have it in terms of tea as well. You could have it in terms of natural herbs, or eating it directly, or in supplements. And that is a parting shot for everybody in this call. Take moringa and you'll never go wrong. You know.
Dr. Lady, just a quick question here from Vanisha. She says, do you have any advice when it comes to PCOS? So women with PCOS, what can they do nutritionally?
In PCOS, sorry, Pranish, sorry, this explain to me.
So people who have like cysts on their ovaries or cancers,
Oh,
what
I
kind
see.
of
Yes, 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 yes.
nutrition would be best for
The
that?
most important thing,
I would think moringa would also help, but
Prince, we didn't
when it
have
comes
time.
to camping and things like that.
Moringa will help that, apple cider vinegar will help that, the GIT. But the most important thing in cystic lesions, in pericordial area, wherever it may be, and something that we didn't have time to touch on tonight is about inflammatory foods. And decrease your inflammatory foods
Yeah.
will get your cystic conditions decreases. And the most important thing, your mental cycles and your lighter foods, your lighter dietary, all these kind. The biggest thing is your circulation. How do you get your circulation going? This is the most
Mm.
important thing.
Okay.
And we know that
Mm.
foods which cause inflammation is your red meat, your processed foods, your bacon, your hot dogs, your cured meats, refined cereals, all are boxed, your white rice, white bread, pastas, your breakfast cereals, your snack foods, your
Mm.
chips and crackers and biscuits and pastries, and your soda drinks and your fizzy drinks and fried foods. These are basically all, and definitely in so-called ovarian cyst condition, and diet is a huge factor. And similarly to what we spoke about last week about children who are and autistic and all these kinds of things. And I think that it's a huge thing that that can help and assist. Is about don't underestimate diet in terms of these conditions. And is you immediately I would say decrease your very I mean um, decrease your inflammatory foods, and there are alternative practitioners that I work with, a range of practitioners. And Prenisha, you can ask them to direct contact you, and I could help and assist them. You know what, and to connect up with the right people if they are struggling with these kinds of things, and can not necessarily prevent an hysterectomy or
Mm.
yeah, so just ask them, to get hold of you, and then you can definitely we can talk about it, and we can help them directly in a private setup.
I would appreciate it. Yes, I'd
Yeah,
love
yeah,
that.
yeah. If
I'd
anybody
appreciate that,
anybody
Dr.
needs help with
Reddy.
that situation, they must please get hold of you, and then we can help them on a one-on-one basis. But just coming to the issue with how to fight, the polycystic, I know the variant syndrome, is about, again, it's about antioxidants. It comes from your brightly colored fruits and vegetables, and there's a great food that which the Indian tradition used to have, what they call is, we know that in the contemporary name is bitter gourd, or what we know in Indian terminology as Kerala, and I
Mm.
think that's one of the food that is recommended, that is low in
Oh.
calories, but is rich in nutrients, and also affects people in terms of insulin or blood sugar levels that are resistant. And so Kerala as a food is a bitter food, helps that as well in getting your blood, but also helps in conditions of what we know in polycystic, and ovarian syndromes. And again, I spoke earlier about a polycystic, in relation to that is your low sugar levels, your low carbohydrate levels. I think that all
Mm.
this is important, and one of the
Mm.
biggest factors is that, is what you call, is a potent antioxidant is your green juice diet, consisting of
Mm.
cabbage, spinach, mint, and all these kinds of things. And also that fruits as well. Be careful of too many fruits with high amount of fructose, so that can also affect you. So what we have sort of would low glycemic index, what things like papaya or pawpaw, which we which tend to have a low glycemic index. Things like your pears, avocados have a low carbon five sugars react, what we know as fructose, yeah.
Mm.
So just against our diet, a lot of things we covered already for polycystic
Mm.
syndrome. I spoke about sprouts, I spoke about your nuts, I spoke about your raisins.
Yes.
All these things
Mm.
can definitely help them positively. Again, it's about, almonds can be from an almond butter. You can make your own almond butter if you want to. And again, it's about whole foods. Try to avoid processed food. That's a key in this whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I hope it helps the people that have got polycystic ovarian syndrome. But definitely,
Mm.
there are routes to help and assist them.
Mm. Absolutely.
Yeah,
And we are
yeah.
here for you guys. So if you ever need advice, please get in touch with me. Please get in touch with Dr. Reddy. Please follow him on all social media. He's here on TikTok and on YouTube as well. And he posts all our videos, all our dialogues onto YouTube. So if you missed out any information, Dr. Reddy does post on his YouTube channel, and I also post on my Facebook page. So please follow us. Please follow Dr. Reddy on TikTok as well. And we will post today's session as well, will be on there. So if you feel like you've missed out on certain things, the information will be up on there. So please get in touch with us. And if you would like us to talk on certain topics, please message us. Please give us feedback if you like things, if you don't like things. If you wish us to discuss different topics, please give us the topics. Please let us know what it is that you want us to discuss. And we'll be ready and we'll make the event. Thank you, Dr. Reddy, for today. It was really an eye opener, and I appreciate all your knowledge and wisdom. And thank you for being with us. Sorry about the tech, everybody, but it's full moon, super moon, planets are all in retrograde. This is what happens. Unfortunate. So thank you for sticking with us, although the tech was a bit off. But thank you so much, Dr. Reddy, for being here as always.
Thanks, Prenisha. Thanks for a great for a great dialogue, and I pray and hope that everybody has benefited in some way on it. And I think that the biggest thing is about the parting shot is that the only thing that's constant in the world is change, and I think we all need a lifestyle change to better our own lives, to better society, and to become happier beings. And I pray for everybody to have a happy blue moon journey.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Reddy. Thanks everybody for all the
Take care.
likes, for the gifts, for the shares.